Okay, so picture this. The year is 865, and everything England thought it knew about Vikings is about to be turned completely upside down. The usual hit-and-run raids, yeah, those were over. Something new was coming ashore, something bigger, something way more organized, and frankly, a lot more terrifying. This is the story of the force the Anglo-Saxons would come to call the Great Heathen Army. Right off the bat, that name tells you this was a whole different ballgame. So, what exactly made this particular Viking army great? Was it just about having a ton of warriors, or was there something else going on? That's really the big question we're going to dig into. You see, for almost a century, Viking raids were kind of like a nasty summer storm. A fleet shows up, they sack a monastery or a town for its loot, and then whoosh, they're gone with the tide. But the Great Heathen Army? They totally rewrote the playbook. Their goal wasn't just treasure, it was territory. They didn't come to raid, they came to rule. And this is where the story really kicks off. That massive shift from just raiding to a full-blown invasion. We're not talking about a single warband here. This was a coalition, a combined force of Scandinavian warriors unlike anything the divided Anglo-Saxon kingdoms had ever seen before. You know, the army's name actually comes directly from the people who feared it the most. The scribes who wrote the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle called it the Mizzle Hethen Hera, which literally means the Great Heathen Army. That name alone is like a historical record of the sheer terror it caused across Christian England. And this? Well, this is the face of that army. This reconstruction is based on a real skeleton found at Repton, which was one of the army's big winter camps. It's a pretty powerful reminder that these weren't just faceless monsters from a storybook. These were real people who came to fight, to conquer, and, as it turns out, to stay. And in leading this whole operation were figures that were basically straight out of a Norse saga: Ivar the Boneless, Halfdan Ragnarsson, and Ubba. These were three sons of the incredibly famous, maybe even mythical, Viking hero Ragnar Lodbrok. Just their names would have been enough to send a chill down anyone's spine. And according to those sagas, this wasn't just about conquest, it was personal. The legend tells us that their father, Ragnar, was captured by an English king and killed by being thrown into a pit of snakes. So this massive invasion, it was their revenge. Now, whether that's 100% historical fact or just some epic storytelling, you have to admit, the idea of a giant army fueled by vengeance is a heck of a motivator. So just how great was this army, really? Well, when you start talking numbers, that's where historians still argue. Some say it was under 1,000 men. Others argue it was several thousand strong. And this brings us to a really key point. Maybe its greatness wasn't just about its size. Maybe it was about its brilliant strategy, its legendary leaders, and just how relentless it was. But whatever its exact size, the army's effectiveness was, well, undeniable. It launched this systematic campaign to just dismantle the Anglo-Saxon world, taking it apart one kingdom at a time. Okay, so let's trace their first moves. They land in East Anglia in 865. But their opening play wasn't a battle. It was actually a really clever negotiation. The local king gave them horses to basically buy peace, but in doing so, he accidentally equipped the very army that was about to conquer his neighbors. From there, this new, supermobile force just marched north and took the great city of York. And after that, man, the dominoes just started to fall, and with shocking speed. Northumbria was first in 866, then the army swung back around and conquered East Anglia in 869. By 874, the powerful central kingdom of Mercia was gone too. Think about that. In less than 10 years, 3 of the 4 major Anglo-Saxon kingdoms had been wiped off the map. And this conquest was absolutely brutal. The fate of King Edmund of East Anglia became this legendary cautionary tale. He was captured by the Vikings, and when he refused to renounce his Christian faith, they killed him. He would go on to become one of England's most famous saints, Edmund the Martyr, a powerful symbol of Anglo-Saxon defiance. So after 9 years of nonstop warfare, everything came down to this. The Great Viking Army had completely overrun the north, the east, and the center of England. Only one kingdom, Wessex, down in the south, was still holding on. And this is where the story pivots. It becomes about the last bastion of Anglo-Saxon resistance and the one king who would become a legend for simply refusing to break, Alfred of Wessex. But Alfred didn't start this fight alone.
the first defense of Wessex actually fell to his older brother, King Aethelred I. He and a young Alfred fought a whole series of desperate battles as the army pushed right into their homeland.
Then, in 871, his brother dies in the middle of all this, and Alfred becomes king. And talk about inheriting a mess. He was now in charge of a kingdom that was exhausted, totally demoralized, and staring down the most successful invading army in its history. In fact, at first, he had to pay them to leave, just to buy himself a little breathing room.
And that breathing room ran out in 878. After a surprise Viking attack left him as a fugitive in his own kingdom, hiding out in the marshes, Alfred managed to rally a new army for one last, decisive showdown. The entire fate of Anglo-Saxon England was going to be decided at a place called Edington.
And he won. But Alfred's victory at Edington wasn't just about winning one battle. It was about a revolution in warfare. He created a standing army so they could respond quickly and never be caught off guard again. He built a whole network of fortified towns called burhs to act as defensive strongholds. And, so crucially, he built a navy to challenge the Vikings at their own game on the sea. This was a total strategic rethink.
So, the war was over, but that didn't mean the Vikings were gone. Not even close. The victory at Edington didn't kick the army out. Instead, it led to one of the most important political deals in all of English history.
The formal treaty that was worked out between Alfred and the Viking leader, a guy named Guthrum, was something nobody could have predicted. Guthrum and his top commanders actually agreed to be baptized as Christians, and in return, his entire army was given a huge chunk of northern and eastern England to settle down in permanently.
And the final outcome of 14 years of brutal war was a brand new map for England. You can see it here. The Viking ambition was to take the whole country. The reality was a divided land. Alfred's kingdom of Wessex survived and ruled the south, while this huge portion of the north and east became permanent Viking territory, a land that would soon be known as the Danelaw.
What's so amazing is that this history isn't just trapped in ancient books. It's literally being dug out of the ground. At those winter camps, like Repton, archaeologists have unearthed the actual tools of this invasion: swords, everyday items, and even the bones of the warriors themselves. It connects us directly to this pivotal moment in time.
In fact, check this out. One mass grave at Repton held the remains of at least 249 people, and they were overwhelmingly young men. For years, scientists weren't sure about the date, but recent analysis confirms they died in the late 9th century, right when the Great Army was camped there for the winter. This is the hard evidence of the warriors who almost conquered England.
In the end, the Great Heathen Army failed to conquer all of England, but you could argue it succeeded in changing it forever. They came as invaders, but they stayed as settlers, farmers, and traders. They reshaped the language, the laws, even the very DNA of the country. And that just leaves us with one final huge question. What would England even look like today if they had never come at all?